Destiny, that hidden power believed to control what will happen in everyone's future, and Bungie's latest installment in its tradition of gaming excellence. Massive realms, breathtaking visuals, co-op missions, and a shooter's shooter, the Destiny universe is a complex, ever-changing, shared world experience that truly has taken on a life of its own. As a gamer, you will explore the red dunes of Mars and the lush jungles of Venus with unique combinations of weapons and armor, friends and foes, for what has truly become one of the most interesting twists on traditional first-person shooters that we've seen maybe ever. And now with tens of millions of registered users to date, Destiny, the Taken King, is on the horizon, promising a new yet somewhat mysterious next step in the early chapters of the Destiny legacy. I could not wait to sit down and talk with the team that delivered this massive new first-person shooter. Some might even say I was destined. On this episode of Conversations with Creators, we will discuss the next blockbuster release of the Destiny franchise, co-founder Jason Jones, design director Luke Smith, senior environment artist Jason Sussman, and design director Ryan Ellis. Welcome, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming and spending some time talking with us today. We are mostly going to be talking about Destiny. One of your key pillars in the Destiny world is that you wanted to create a world that was both, and I'm quoting here, inviting and hopeful. And I wondered if you could explain to us why you chose those words as your sort of like, as the cornerstones of your pillars, inviting and hopeful, to build, and how that informed the creation of this world.
I'll start. I mean, I felt there's so many video games that turn people away. I feel like we wanted to create a game where even if somebody wasn't playing, they walked by the TV and looked at the game, that it made them curious and, you know, it made them want to figure out what was happening in that game world. A place that you'd want to come back to, not a place that you know, you played a game in and then forgot about.
So as you are working to put this together, like what are your sort of, do you have like a prime directive to like make sure you're nailing that goal?
From the get-go, we made sure that the vibrance and the color and the composition and how we built those environments plays to that, right?
Yeah.
That was super important for us from the beginning.
It even seems just like the music, just during the loading, it seems like it is preparing you for this galactic scale kind of thing, where you have this epic world, but you have these local, intimate environments, which I think are super important to engaging a player and helping build a narrative. So how do you balance where that like huge epic scale is going to get like sort of fractaled down into like, okay, now we're at like the ground level? Because you want people to come back to this. You want them to come and see it more and more, right?
Well, you actually mentioned a really important moment, which is when you first log in and you see space and that hopeful music kicks in, and maybe you've had a long day at work or you've had a long day at school. And so sitting down and kind of that like, I'm going to be pulled into this huge universe is really important. And so that's how it starts. And then, the director in the game, its job is to funnel you into those more details.
If you look at some of the early concept art from Destiny, I mean, it's almost like fantasy, right? You know, you've got the beasts and the ancient swords and all of that business. And at what point does it transition from that which looked really cool, to the futuristic kind of like, it's the edge of space kind of motif that you settled on, which also is super, super cool.
We realized that's where our heart was in spaceships and and aliens, and that we loved the fantastic, and so we brought a bunch of that with us. But we realized that's where we wanted to be, like ultimately.
Was there a science fiction that like? I think we all have a science fiction that we love the most, right? That kind of affects us, that directs the way that we look at science fiction the most, right? Whether it's like Battlestar Galactica or Alien or Silent Running or whatever. What was your influence?
I know, I was running.
That's good. You're reaching back there.
That was the first movie that made me cry as a little kid.
Doesn't hold up.
Yeah.
But what do you?
For me, it's books. I mean, the most ridiculous ideas are in books, and I think it's because one person with an amazing idea can spin out a story by themselves, and so for me, it's books.
I want to take the lightning force from Hyperion and put it into something sometime because that's fascinating to me. Is there like if you had to cite influences? Is that a thing you would do? Is that a thing you want to do, or would you rather we just move along?
Here's a shocking one for me. It was absolutely Star Wars. I mean, that affected me as a small child and as a grown child. It still affects me today, and I mean, I wanted to be in that universe, and I still do, and hopefully, we can turn Destiny into something that everybody else wants to be in too.
Mars is one of the environments that you developed for Destiny, and it's rather detailed. Talk me through that process, that day-to-day experience from the conceptual development to the practical coding of that whole situation.
When we started out on Mars, we looked at a lot of actual locations. We were looking at Olympus Mons, and I'm trying to get all the names, but there's a lot of real locations we looked at early on to try to get a sense of scale of where you were and player orientation. Mm-hmm. And so we look at from a broad level, and then we kind of dial in from that. And we knew the flow, or we were working on the flow through the whole space. And then originally we were like, is it an outpost, just a small outpost? And then Chris Barrett, our art director, thought the juxtaposition of having like a city, buried in sand, like humanity had reached out in a very hopeful time, and now it's fallen, and you're trying to figure that out and figure out what the mystery is with the city. And so we kind of then we slowly start dialing in, and I'm jumping, like years, but like we start kind of slowly refining what that is. But our Mars is very different because, everything's been changed. It's a very different time period. So we were taking reality and then amplifying that and adding some of the mythic science fiction that we wanted to kind of sprinkle in everything.
Yeah, we had this phrase, idealized reality, that we used to kind of guide our process. And even though those pictures of Mars from NASA are stunning, like recreating that in a video game, it's a little dry. Yeah. Like it's just
They're
flat.
Stunning, but would be so much better if.
Yeah,
right?
And so we that's the way we look at it. Was what would make this more fantastical than it already is?
So the Traveler, extraordinarily interesting concept. Where does that come from?
Why are you looking at me?
Someone who's worked on this game for 10 years or whatever.
I'm not at liberty to cite the influences of the Traveler at this time.
How very interesting. You want to talk about Marathon?
I think it's,
do that.
It's a lot of places, but like ultimately it's the mystery box that created the golden age that we're exploring, and the opportunity to play that out and think about it for the future of Destiny is really exciting. And we wanted that symbol for the game, and found it in the Traveler. But there's no satisfying answer. There's no line from something where you're like, yes.
Do you do any practical modeling of things, or is it all inside a computer space?
It's all in computer space, yeah.
And we've actually seen it go the other way, where fans have taken some of our content and 3D printed them out into to real objects, and I get a huge kick seeing that stuff. So it goes,
exotics.
Those were amazing. Whoever did those, good job.
Yeah, it is. It's totally amazing, and I think it's almost the only reason that a bunch of us do what we do is get seeing how much it matters to people. Mm-hmm. I went to the Game Developers Conference, and like literally the first person that walked up to me at the Game Developers Conference had a Warlock helmet on. And it was amazing, and a bunch of us signed it, and it was a good start to GDC.
Do you remember that first moment So you work, I worked in software development for a little, nothing near like what you guys do, but I worked in software development for a little time. And I remember that, like, okay, we're getting there, and now we have 15 days and no one's gonna sleep, and it's the 16th day and I just wanna die, and it's out the door, you know? And then after you recover, you interact with a person who, a normal person who has experienced it for the first time, right? Do you recall the first time you interacted with somebody who had visited Destiny and had been affected by it, or?
So for me, it really was like after you said 15 days, let's make it 6 months or whatever. It was this close-knit group of friends who we all played video games together, played video games with them for, 2 decades, some of them. And when they finally got to take the game for a drive and play it, and I just got to sit there quietly and listen, like it was what I had been waiting for, was to actually get to play this game with my buddies and to eventually like make our way as a group through all the game's content and hear them point out a bunch of stuff that we totally, could have done better. Like, that's awesome. Like we get a whole internet of people who do that now, of course. But like hearing that from these guys and hearing the joy for, some of my closest friends, like making their way through the game was, probably the most rewarding part.
When you go through like that, are you able to be surprised? Or are you so close to it that it's just like, no, I know everything?
Oh, no. Especially with something like the raids, which is one of the things that I worked on for Destiny 1, like the surprise is almost constant with the way that people play the game, solve puzzles that we create, and the way that they navigate through spaces is way more intelligent en masse than what we do internally. So it's like a constant flow of surprise.
There are some games that I really enjoy, and I almost feel like I'm sort of railroaded by the developer to make these choices and go along this path, and this is all that I get to do. And Destiny is one of the games that doesn't feel like that. The Rockstar games don't feel like that. Borderlands doesn't feel like that, right? That just feels like, I can go this way or I can go that way, and I can do these different things. When you are developing, how do you approach that responsibility?
I heard you open your mouth, Ryan.
Well, it is a responsibility, and I think it goes back to, for me, it's about creating a universe. The most exciting thing for me in game development is I get to exercise my God complex. We get to go create an entire place, and if you do a good job and you instill enough stories into the environment just naturally, we talk about like, how should this car be sitting? Well, it should be kind of up like this because when this person drove the thing, the wheel blew up and then they skidded out of control, and you're like, and that's a piece of background art. Yeah. But we try to talk about it in that depth, and I think that kind of thought process comes out to the player, even though it's indirect. Yeah. Like you sense it, and when you're running around these places, it's like, I don't know what that is, but I feel like there's something important that's trying to tell me, and that makes the universe feel big and alive and real in a way that is really important.
We're not building this linear path through the environment. We now have all these paths, and you can encounter other players, and things are going to change. There's public events that happen, and so we consistently tried to build like, I can see the city over there. There's the Cabal Tower over there, and it's in the distance. We put a tower off in the distance, so that I can go there and I can navigate to that space, and there's always something to get to. So yeah.
But a bunch of the other freedom that I think you're describing is like the local player empowerment of moving through the world and fighting monsters the way that you want to, which is something that is that's like core and culture to, I think, the types of games that Bungie makes. It's the like immersion action sandbox. Like that's a big part of the empowerment and the player's journey in addition to the construction of the worlds themselves.
Yeah, the gear you're wearing tells a story, right? Yeah. Like if you're a good person, you use fusion rifles, and if you're a horrible person, you use shotguns. And that says something about you.
It really does. It lets. Yeah, of course. No, I get it. I absolutely get it. That's how, as I'm approaching you, I can know maybe I should walk away.
Yeah, exactly.
What does it say about me that I use 2 shotguns?
We'll talk later.
There is there's a debate that I believe has been settled, but still strangely comes up about games as art and about games as a type of experience that can meet or exceed the experience we have with movies, television, and other forms of media. And every time I hear that a movie is going to be made from a current generation video game that I really, really loved, my first reaction is, why would they do that? The game was the movie. The game was the experience. Destiny is so cinematic and has such strong storytelling and has such a deep is so incredibly immersive. Have you considered at all taking it into other areas?
I'll talk to the first thing that you were saying about games as art. I'm not really into labels. Pluto's a planet. I don't really care. Like what is Pluto? I think that's the interesting thing, and I think it's really interesting to look at games and think about what they can do as interactive mediums that like movies or books can't. But those other mediums of entertainment they're good at different things, and I think all of them in their own way can be art. And I don't know if it sounded like you were going there, like, are games art, or what do you think of the people that don't think games are art? And
I mean, that's like saying, what do you think about people who are convinced the world is flat? They're wrong. They're not worth acknowledging. When I think of art, I think of something that makes me experience an emotion, or challenges me to think about things, or makes me look at a thing that I was really convinced was one way, but actually has inspired me to look at it in a different way. And movies have done that for me my whole life, and books have done that for me as long as I can remember. And while a game like Pitfall or Yar's Revenge was really super fun for me, it didn't do it for me the way that, like, I don't know, one of those really hard character decisions I had to make in Dragon Age Origins, when I was like, but I want you both to stay with me, And I wonder, I think Destiny absolutely qualifies under those rules as something that affects the player beyond do this mission, shoot the thing up, and get the loot and go.
Well, I think the other thing that games do is they build relationships with other people, right? Because Destiny, you're meeting other people online, and people are forming guilds, and they're doing these raids, and because it has to have really tight cooperation, right? And so you're having to bond with other players, and I think that film doesn't really do that, but film does all these other things really well, and it's just a different medium, like you were saying, that has its own thing.
I mean, every Saturday I go to the movies by myself. I go see something alone. But the thing that we were talking about with that's what they're for. That's what it's like, the place where you can just go and not talk to anyone for 2 hours, and then watch Liam Neeson kill a bunch of dudes. It's sweet. But Destiny, what's the phrase we talked about before? Like, Destiny is basically the alibi for shooting aliens while you talk about the Oscars. And so that there's this art in the connectivity and connection between people, and watching things like communities spring up around getting into groups, or facilitating play with one another. That to me is a lot of what Destiny's about, and you're very complimentary of the story, but I think a lot of the art for me of Destiny is the enabling of players to spend time in a world together in this way that only a game can really do now.
And what art is so personal to people, but for me, games are the art. Partially because we have so much growing to do, and games are going to teach us things we don't even know yet, and that's super exciting for our industry. Where are we going to be in 10 years? Who knows? But I can't wait.
And it's one of the things that that when we talk about Destiny, we talk about how you can run through the same area multiple times, and it doesn't feel like, okay, he comes up behind that rock now, and then this thing happens here. It feels like this living and evolving and actual world. So when I say that you can kind of go anywhere with it, that's really exciting to me as a player, because it's like, if I walk down the same street every day, I'll see the same people, but some days things are going to be way different when I go down that street. And the world you made feels that way to me.
I think that we actually have a lot of opportunities for improvement in some of the stories that you were telling there, that dynamism locally, boots on the ground, is an area that we have massive potential for improvement. I know that like a bunch of players may see different things, but probably for us, as players who've played an absolute ridiculous amount of hours in the game, that's an area that we want to make the world better. We want to make the worlds of Destiny much more dynamic and ever changing, more like worlds. And that. That's a limitation that we totally look forward to breaking through.
That's also. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, there's a therapy to running a strike for the 10th time and knowing exactly where people come from and just wrecking them with your gear and your abilities and your friends.
Destiny is just a massive financial and commercial success, and that is not my opinion. That is a fact. That is unassailable. It is massively successful, and I wonder at what point do you, as a creative team, when do you say, all right, we did this. This is what we wanted to do. We we made a good game. Really.
They're like
we had a lot of work to do, man.
Cry 1,000 tears every day about the things what could have been, what we'd want to do, what we still want to do. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I actually don't think there are many or any people on the Bungie team who look at Destiny as a job well done. It's like a job in progress that has a ridiculous amount of work in front of us and like huge amounts of potential that we haven't met at all in a bunch of ways, and we've met it in other ways. But like that potential is the thing that I think we're still chasing. Like we have to make Destiny, the franchise, into something that rises up to meet the potential that people imagine when they sit down and they hear the like brr, 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 the music from the beginning or whatever. That's the opening theme. I don't know. Yeah, clearly. But
Yeah, I played all of our games a whole bunch, but I bet all of us have played this game more than any that we've ever shipped before. And to be in that world as players, to see the opportunity and to know that we can go into the office and make good on it is really exciting.
Would you agree that the primary co-op multiplayer experience in Destiny is more cooperative than competitive?
I've been playing almost nothing but competitive the last 2 months. But
oh, that's interesting.
It goes both ways.
My limited experience has been really positive. I haven't run into that gamer who I call the I f***ed your mom gamer, who sort of makes online play so miserable. Like most of the people that I've encountered online are just like, good job, man. And let's play again. Like this, the way that it should be, no matter what. And I wondered if that was sort of baked into the design, the design at all.
So a part that is actually baked into the design and was super controversial during the development is the emotes. Good job, man. Without having voice to someone, when you complete a strike, I don't know, I've played tons of strikes. People almost always emote, dance, wave, sit, do something disrespectful to the boss's corpse that they can muster. Yeah, but after a strike's over, they're finding these ways to communicate and connect. And while we were building the game, we have this internal feedback forum that's just called /feedback, and it's basically an internal version of Reddit where people get to just vote up and vote down different ideas. Mm-hmm. And one of the most controversial threads ongoing through the game's development was emotes. Emotes, live or die. And it was, there was this joke, which was there were two types of people at Bungie: the people who were wrong and the people who liked emotes.
And there was actually another pretty controversial decision wrapped up in that, and that was to default with no voice.
Yeah.
And that was on purpose.
Yeah.
And that gets rid of a lot of that internet noise, that you hear in a lot of other games. And that, we argued about that for months and months and months, and ultimately landed where we did. And I'm very thankful of it because I've had a similar experience to you, which is a very helpful one.
Do you think that might be a direction that titles are, that as the industry matures, and as the majority of players mature, and you have this itty bitty subset that won't mature, do you think maybe that's where we're headed?
I don't think it's even about the maturity of people. I think it's about creating the environment where positive social interactions occur. And yeah, absolutely, the industry is going to be headed towards. How do you create a framework within which a community can grow, like a positive community can grow? Absolutely.
And Hearthstone's another great example. You can only set the presets. However, the timing of when you say good job, very important. Because someone can still be a jerk to you if you flub it and they're immediately good job, good job, good job. You're like, somewhere there's some jerk.
Thanks.
I'm like,
there is a new iteration of Destiny on the horizon. Perhaps the galactic horizon might be the way to look at it, since we're talking about the event horizon, since we're talking about Destiny. What would you like to share with us about worlds that you have in mind, and what we can expect out of this upcoming iteration of the universe?
So in the game that's beginning year 2, Destiny: The Taken King, we are absolutely we're absolutely trying to react to a bunch of the criticism of the previous year, where we now have, a central thrust through the entire game. The title of the game is The Taken King. It's a game simply about a story as simple as bad guy shows up in town, brings an evil army with him, and you and the Guardians of the City are gonna bum rush his fortress in the sky and take him out. And it's this simple concept that then allows us to breathe a bunch of life back into the worlds by raising this army across the solar system. The player's going to encounter that through a bunch of their adventures. You have this villain who's we've taken some notes from some of the great work in DLC 1, which was about this pair of villains, Omnigul and Crota, and that worked really well and was really resonant with our players. And so as we tilted the Taken King into having a single villain, Oryx, who is in fact Crota's father, you now have this aspirational villain who's going to sort of haunt you and taunt you throughout the campaign experience, and then of course is going to be the thing that's going to lead you into the raid. We wanted to have an experience that was really connected and thematic throughout, which was another one of those areas that we had for improvement, I think, from Destiny 1. And then if we're going to introduce this bad guy to you, it would be silly for us not to introduce a whole shit ton of new stuff for you to do as a player. So there's 3 new subclasses. I'm not going to spoil all of them here. These guys are going to talk about them. There's a bunch of new weapons. We've doubled down on a bunch of the concepts that we loosely exposed in Destiny 1 with the way that weapons work. And we had this concept that you would see a Hake rifle, forged in the Crucible. Well, that led the team to ask a bunch of questions what is a weapon? What is it? And so a Hake rifle, what does that mean? Well, it means it's got a specific form, it's got its own set of talents, and we've built this sort of weapon branding aesthetic into the game where now people are going to be pulled in different directions based on weapons that they do fall in love with and weapons that they do find and get to tinker with in a bunch of ways. You guys, what do you play? You play a Warlock.
Yes.
I know what you play. You play a Titan, and you play...
Sorry. Whoa. I play a Defender Titan.
Oh, okay. So the new Titan is basically a fire hammer wielding version of, aspirationally something like Thor throwing hammers that...
I'm on board.
Yeah. Throwing hammers that light the world on fire.
Yes.
And
that's me.
So
That's who I'm going to be.
I don't know. You have to see the Warlock though with the electricity.
Nope. Fire wielding, fire hammer.
so the Warlock.
Yeah, the Warlock ability is amazing. The new one is really, really cool because you just float around, just blasting people with electricity. It looks very much like the Emperor or something from Star Wars.
How many fire hammers does it throw?
Yeah, zero fire hammer.
No,
but I never give him a chance to throw it because I'm just vapor.
Hammers, they create pools of fire, and then if you stand in the fire, it makes you stronger.
Yeah.
But only you. Everybody else.
Everybody else gets. Yeah.
Yep.
One of the things I'm most excited about.
Sell me on this Warlock.
One of the things I'm most excited about is just a little grenade. And you throw it, and a wall of purple fire erupts out and destroys everything in its path. And I'm like, that replaced the Angry Bees for me.
Do you want to tease the fans at all? I mean, do you want to would any of you like to obliquely tease fans with something that they would be excited to speculate about?
I mean, I won't even leave it to speculation. One of the areas that we will improve on this fall is the fantasy of, how do I get loot? We want you to get loot from the world. We want you to get powerful items from the world, from killing monsters. We want the new destination that you're going to be going to in The Taken King to be an inscrutable loot-filled fortress. We want it to be a place that you go, a new set of rituals with new activities to do. We want to make you engage with the world more to get the gear that you care about. And I think that's I'm not even going to hint at that. We're just going to deliver that.
Outer planets? Gas giants?
I think that
Titan Europa? Enceladus?
We've got a lot of years of Destiny ahead of us and a lot of planets to visit.
Yeah, the solar system has a lot of places that we could go.
It's ripe with potential, man.
The pressure of potential within the solar system.
Do you have your individual lists, your project? Or do you have, is anyone working on all right, so, primarily we need to get this out the door, but I'm also kind of doing this on the side because I really want it in the game.
So why are you looking at me? Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I mean, like you said, we all have our passions in this universe and things that we want to get in for the fans and for ourselves, and I mean it's just endless.
Is it pretty top down in that regard, where you have your creative directors who go this is what we're going for, or can directors come up and say, so we've been working on this and we kind of thought, and you have that conversation and let it develop out? Or is it pretty much like, you know, we're pretty set?
With like Jason basically is the overall. I mean, he's the overall franchise creative director, and then Ryan is the game director for an upcoming title, and then I'm the game director for The Taken King. And what we're doing is we're working with Jason, and then there are like a couple other people in this group, and we meet every week, and we're talking about where are we going. And because the thing that would be really helpful to me and probably to Ryan is to know like, hey, when your game's going to come out, the year is going to be about this. Like, we want, how do we like weave that together? Yeah. And that comes from this conversation that is both, you know, informed by Jones, but also informed by the, you know, arsenal of knowledge that we have from working with the teams on our respective projects. So it's like bubbling up from them and then sharing it, editing it into like, how do we make the cogent thematic package that someone looks at and goes, wow, I have to get in this year. Like I have to buy this game. Like I can't wait to play that.
That's the top down part, but the bottom up, I mean, there's so many things in the game that only exist because, you know, one person, you know, got super passionate about
it. Well, there's people that will just work in the back and they're like secretly like, okay, this is my job, but in the back I'm gonna do this thing and I'm gonna present it.
We plan for a chunk of content that we call emergent, which is it's not a plan from some director. Like it's where cool ideas are going to get born.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, someone in the building is going to have an awesome idea, and we want to cultivate that and like get it in. And so we try to block out time for that stuff.
That's
because
really cool.
Because it matters. I mean, we make better games if we inspire everybody to feed into it.
I mean, we should say, that's kind of where the raid came from. That's where raids came from, was really kick-ass idea. Like, hey, we should do this experience, and working on that kind of the back burner and then slowly kind of revealing it to the studio.
But Luke didn't have a choice. Let's be clear.
So that's awesome that it like encourages people to be creative and build take that and do it.
Yeah, I mean we're making video games. It should be fun. You know, you should have those moments. You know?
The job is so stressful, and it's like stressful in these ways where it's so easy to lose sight of, oh my gosh, like the job is to guarantee that when Jimmy picks up the controller and the title screen for the game comes up and the music comes up, his avatars show up, he smiles. You know, like that's like the, and then, talk about the pressure of potential. Like the pressure of guaranteeing someone's happiness is pretty frightening.
So this is a thing that is sort of unique to maybe this moment in time. I mean, I know all of your resumes, and I mean, you guys made games that I've been playing since the 90s, and that was a time where it was possible for us who were players in your games to sort of like track down or reach out or send an email or make a Usenet post or whatever, but it wasn't as immediate, it wasn't as accessible, and it wasn't as communicative as it is now. Does that, like, look back on like maybe the last 20 years, you know, on that career, and how has that changed the decisions you make as developers? I mean, I know it's the ways that it changes, you know, audiences' interactions are self-evident, but how does it change the way you approach development? Like then versus now, and maybe one spot in between?
Well, I mean, just look at the game we made. I mean, we came from building linear campaign shooters, you know, with this maybe competitive game that a lot of people played for a long time afterwards. But I mean, what we totally turned that around, and we built a game for a community. We built a game to be live. We built a game we could build into, and I mean, I think we did that because that's the kind of game we wanted to play, but also because the internet, everything you just said. I mean, the connection that we could have to the community, and that's why it's so amazing to read Reddit to see what people are doing in this sandbox that we built for them.
And the feedback loop is so fast. I mean, we'll release a patch, and in 5 minutes we're hearing about it, right? Like, oh man, you know, and that's amazing to be able to get that response quickly.
It makes me feel really good as a creator and as a player to hear, yeah, you know, sometimes we make mistakes and we learn from them, and it makes me feel like, well, shit, I'm on board with this franchise more than I already was, because like now I know, like the feedback is taken in, you know?
We wish we could, you know, talk directly to people all the time. You're like, oh, you're so right, we know, we're working on it, like, but we can, right? Like we have to be careful about what we say and what we do. But
and we're our own worst critics too, right? I mean, a lot of that. I mean, some of the stuff that's out there is like we know. We are already. I mean, we're immediately game ships. We're already like, okay, we need to address some of these issues. And so
here's the thing. Pretty much everything that people are like yell about and make a big deal about, they're right in the sense that we're somehow falling short of what we should have done. Like they had an experience that they didn't like and they're yelling about it. I think it's very difficult to actually go from that to the the diagnosis of what you should do. But like when people get up in arms about something on the internet, it's usually for a reason. I would say it's almost always for a reason, like deep down. Like we pay attention to that.
That's good to know.
Because now you're going to get the pitchforks out on the internet.
Well, I just have a few grievances I'd like to air.
And caps lock really gets our attention. So.
How do you feel about the poop emoji?
It's my favorite.
I find that's really great. You guys, I'm really looking forward to Destiny: The Taken King, and I'm looking forward to playing it with my kids who are adults, but we play games together. So that's really fun, and I very much appreciate you taking some time to come here and have this conversation with me today. And thanks for making a thing that I like.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks
for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Interstate 76 came out, which I really loved. And I actually found my Interstate 76 gameplay discs recently and ripped the music off of them so I could have that soundtrack because it's so much fun on a road trip. My son Nolan was like 7 and he wanted to see the game. And I was like, I don't think you're gonna like this, buddy. And he came in to look at me as I was playing this map that was a user-generated map where all you did was race your car down a hill as fast as you can and jump. And just see how long. I thought it would be boring to him. And the whole point of this map was it was like you can jump, no weapons, no armor, and you were gonna wipe out every time. But the stupid amount of fun that you had just like tricking out your car like as light as you could with the heaviest motor to go and blast off of that ramp. And he was like, let's do this some more. That's awesome. I mean, it's cool. And you're like, yeah, now do you want to see the game? No! More jumps!